Charlene, thinking about the disruption mindset, maybe you can start with the new preface you wrote and just, what's your thinking today about, the book and the times that we're in today, and then how we might make it to the other side.
Right. I mean, I wrote the book before this whole thing happened. And so I wanted to put the book into context, like how do you actually develop a disruption mindset now? Because we're going to need one in order to deal with all the uncertainty and the turbulence we're going to experience over the next 12 to 18 months until the vaccine is here. And even then, it's still going to be a question of how effective and everything else that goes with that.
Right.
So I think the only certainty we have right now is uncertainty.
Right.
And so how do we actually deal with that? So a couple things I talk about in there in the preface, just to set that stage around safety and security, obviously, but also using tools like scenario planning.
Right.
And in particular, being able to speed up and think about strategy planning outside of the annual process, making a continuous process.
And for those people, I know Shell has really pioneered scenario planning. Other companies have adopted it, but for those out there who may not be that familiar with it, can you share a little bit about what scenario planning is?
Sure. When we do strategy planning or just planning for the next year, we typically do it on a forecast model, which is how did we do last year and how will we expand on that from this year? So it's based on the past. Scenarios throw that completely out the window, and you develop models for what the future could look like. And all of them are very viable models. Yeah. And then you develop strategies for every single one of them. And then you figure out what are the no regrets moves that you can take that will keep you well within every single one of those scenarios. So you just go and execute those things.
Yeah.
And then you figure out the triggers to see what's going to actually happen, and you're prepared for any uncertainty that's out there.
That's great. And I know you have a digital transformation survey in the field. I don't know if we get any, sneak peeks at any early results, but I may as well ask.
Yeah, sure can. I literally got the latest results in, literally just got it now. And a third of the people are saying that they're investing in growth initiatives more. So it's interesting because the question becomes, are you pulling back or are you moving forward? Do you see opportunities in all of this disruption? So again, about 35% of them are doing that. And then just one other figure I wanted to throw out there is that half of them are investing more into their digital transformations. So and about 30% of them said that COVID was the biggest driver for their digital transformation.
Right.
So that was clearly, this is a huge wake-up call for people.
I'm sure a lot of people have seen that cartoon out there. what drove your digital transformation? Before we jump in with Mark, and in terms of sort of this accelerating, we've been talking through all of our roundtables the past few weeks about, we at CDX have been covering digital transformation for 8 years, but now it's all about accelerating digital transformation. So whether it's leveraging scenario planning a little bit, or what are some best practices that you could offer out there to people that not just engaging in digital transformation and saying in theory I want to drive it, and but how do you really accelerate that, particularly when maybe resources are a bit more scarce, all these unknowns, people are scared, how do you accelerate it at a time like this?
Well, the thing that we're testing with this survey is to say, what is the business transformation that you're truly supporting? Is it operational efficiencies? Is it about serving your existing customers better? Or is it a third scenario, which is driving exponential growth with new customers, which require new capabilities? So digital transformation never happens in a vacuum. So understanding and really connecting your digital transformation efforts, your innovation efforts back to fundamental business transformation goals is crucial.
And you and I have talked in the past about, look, everybody wants to engage in huge digital transformation efforts. I know P&G used to have as part of one of their incubation efforts, if they didn't think it was $1 billion idea, they didn't really want to talk about it. But we talked about this idea of small wins, and maybe that's even more important than ever. But can you talk a little bit about your approach to accelerating and yes, we want to invest in growth initiatives, but how do you get those small wins to keep the momentum?
I think the biggest transformation happening right now is this democratization of innovation happening. And especially with the scattering of our employees all across the globe to working at home, we're developing new relationships now. And we're beginning to trust our employees a lot more and give them a lot more agency to be able to do these things. So when we're talking about small wins, we're talking about small wins multiplied across your entire organization. So it's no longer just sitting on the
Right.
shoulders of a few small.
Yeah, and last week we were talking with Alliance Bernstein and Clorox, amongst others, and these are the people who are running their open innovation types of programs, and they say they're busier than ever. Comcast has their accelerator labs, they're busier than ever. So it is the democratization of innovation. I think that's absolutely right, and sort of the top-down and bottom-up approach. So I'd like to get to the interview to Mark Kenneally, but first, Charlene, thank you again. You've offered a digital version of your book. I'm going to let everybody know how we're going to get that to them at the end of our second session with Hyundai. So thank you again for that. It's a very generous offer and very timely as well. And with that, I'm going to have you take it over with Mark from Gilead. And Mark, thank you again for joining us. Charlene, why don't you take it away?
Okay, great. Hey, Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Where are you coming from?
California, Menlo Park.
Right. And
It's
how
sunny outside.
It's nice. It's beautiful today. I'm right up in the road in San Francisco. And how has work changed for you? I mean, you lead an innovation team at Gilead, so
Yeah, I lead an innovation team, and we've been, as you mentioned, scattered across the globe, and not. I suppose on our team, not a lot has changed because we did remote working. Building that over the last couple of months. But yeah, from a family point of view, it's dramatically changed. To working parents, and to give the usual shout out, if you hear anything in the background, my wife is teaching a class next door. So yeah, that's changed. But from a team point of view, and as you mentioned, Gilead, even though we're in the center of the COVID-19 pandemic, the entire employee base has been working from home, essentially, except for about 1,000 of our scientists who are still based in the Foster City campus.
And so tell us about your role at Gilead. What's your remit, your responsibilities there?
Yeah, so there's a couple of aspects to it. So looking at new technology, what's coming down on the horizon, how that can inform some of the business direction and add value on the business side. We run the internal innovation activities, like the design thinking workshops, technology fairs around what's the art of the possible, all to deliver business value. Now I'm on the IT side of the house. We also have people who are on clinical innovation, commercial digitalization, and then there's an external focused team on the science side of things, looking at molecules and things like that can add to our portfolio. So there's a kind of a core team that I'm part of on the innovation corporate side of things.
Right. Now, it's exciting to see what's happening at Gilead, especially with the development of Remdesivir. I imagine you guys have been extremely busy. But we were talking during our prep call yesterday that one of the things that was that's not been told is how you all were preparing for this, and a new management team came in last year. Can you talk a little bit about setting the stage for how things change at Gilead before Remdesivir and COVID hit?
Yeah, so kind of jumping a small bit back into a brief history of Gilead, and I don't think people know the full history of the company up until the recently very kind of private, focused on the science, got the products out there, did not advertise much, but Gilead has a long history in antivirals, all the way going back to actually Tamiflu is a Gilead product back in 1996, and that was licensed to Roche because Gilead was so small at the time, it couldn't grow that internally, so they licensed that to Roche. But that kind of drove a lot of work in the HIV space. Then that led to hepatitis C, HIV prevention. So antiviral is our core area. There's been a lot of work over the last few years on, if a virus did break out, what was going to happen, being that our core area, what was it going to happen to our company? What was it going to happen to demand in our area? And people need to kind of, and I don't think they know that Remdesivir has been there for a number of years, all the way back to Ebola, SARS, MERS, that there's a long history there. until recently, it's been just sitting in our warehouse. Now everybody's looking for it. But the change in leadership that happened last year, new CIO coming in, our CEO coming in March of last year, that was our first external CEO. The two previous CEOs that we had were founders of the company. So very science focused, very much focused on the science. And the whole team has changed in those 12 months. As I said, new CEO, new CFO, new chief medical officer, new head of HR, new Kite CEO, new head of commercial, entire change in the leadership, the approach. We're calling it the kind of Gilead 2.0. And now it's more patient focused. It's bringing that science with the experience of the patient together. And, you know, the old culture was very intimidating if you were not science focused, and that's not for everybody. You know, failure wasn't tolerated. They want to achieve, you know, high degree of success, but that mindset has totally shifted in the last 12 months. And now if you take all of that happening over time, getting ready for something like this, change in leadership, the scattering of the employee base, trying to launch remdesivir in the middle of all of this, it's just brought everything together, and it's actually fascinating the way that it actually has happened, the remdesivir story, and with everybody playing their role in that, from the CEO doing his trips to Washington, the CFO is doing the work with external companies to get them involved, all the way down to the warehouse guys in the site in Laverne to get it on the truck and get it shipped. Everybody knows their place.
And this wasn't going to be possible in the old Gilead, it sounds like. It was just only possible because of the way you said
I think we would have struggled. And the way that it was, so when the start of the outbreak happened, I mean, the leadership team were all over it straight away. Before, I mean, you're talking from the first case in the US to when the FDA issued the emergency use authorization, 90 days. And that's unheard of. Now, to do that and to seek, and the way that Dan phrased it was very, very good, in that he didn't give everybody, you know, we must be successful. We just need an answer. And all we need is that answer. Is this going to work or is it not going to work? And it kind of freed up everybody. There was no budget meeting whether we should do this. There was no kind of, you know, governance structure that we have to, everybody knew the role that they had to play into getting an answer, and to kind of see that happen where there was no constraints put on people. People were working from home, still doing all the filing with the FDA from home. And the IT guys making sure that Zoom stayed up the entire time. Everybody just knew their role to play, but just get to an answer. Don't worry about the investment cost. Don't worry about all of that stuff. And that's the way that it was phrased, and that may not have been the way that it would have been put in the old leadership team.
Mm-hmm. I at the beginning of this broadcast, I talked a little bit about scenario planning. So can you talk a bit about how that has helped you think about business continuity? Because again, so many things are happening. How did it help you prepare?
So as I said, like having your core business in antivirals, it helped us kind of try to predict if this was going to happen. We've done in the last couple of months, and in the last 18 months, tabletop exercise with the executives, bringing them through different scenarios of what might happen. I know it's hard to believe, but Gilead did not have a corporate strategy up until last December. So when the new CEO came in, and we didn't have a corporate strategy, that's the first thing that he went to. So now that we do have a corporate strategy in place, which has a number of aspirations around transformative therapies, since then, the strategy team have looked at, okay, what will now disrupt that strategy? So what do we need to get from signals, interpret those signals, what do they mean? within the disruption of that strategy, and a lot of work has gone into that. So we've done the scenarios around if we lost a manufacturing site for some reason. And I'm laughing now because one of those scenarios that we ran through was the site where remdesivir comes from in Laverne outside LA. If that site was isolated for some reason, what would we do, and what would happen? And we've run through those with the executive team just to give them some understanding what the potential outcome could be, and try to answer as many what if questions.
And so just thinking about, because you work very closely, because you're in charge of the innovation around the IT and the UX, and you have your partners in innovation, for example, in drug discovery. What have you learned watching them and going through this with them, side by side with them, about innovation best practices? How is this going to impact the way that we do future drug discovery, or even just the way that you think about innovation?
Yeah, it's definitely raised so many questions around the way that we thought that things could be done. Okay, we work in a very highly regulated environment, but still we can launch probably one of the most in-demand products at a time during a pandemic remotely. So it's just caused us to kind of question a lot of stuff. Obviously we do still have the scientists in the lab, but it's amazing how having that much focus, what can be achieved, and what can be achieved when everybody's working remotely and virtually. Gilead has always kind of prided itself on, reducing times when, we get approval and it's shipped within a matter of weeks. We got it down to days. Now we've got it down to hours, and now we've got it down to actually minutes. So when the FDA gave the approval for remdesivir, I think it was on the truck within half an hour, and it was out the door. So to get to that level, and to do that with, the team on the clinical side and clinical operations working entirely remotely. Obviously, the manufacturing guys are working in the manufacturing plant with the social distancing in place, and still to achieve all of that, I think some of the traditional R&D processes, thinking, I think it is all going to be revisited. And just to throw another couple of things in there that happened around the same time, we acquired a company in the middle of all of this and completed a first virtual merger and acquisition of 47 during that time as well. Kite Pharma filed their second CAR-T treatment during this time as well. So it's not as if the entire company shifted and just focused on remdesivir. All of the HIV work still went on. I mean, for Kite, cancer didn't stop, and they kept going with what they needed to do remotely. But yeah, the traditional R&D processes, I think, are going to be massively disrupted after this.
So speaking of that, one of the things you've been a big proponent of is open innovation. So can you talk about how you and the company have leveraged open innovation, especially how you're going to be leveraging that moving into the future, especially external innovation, right?
Yeah, it's been a journey, because the way Gilead operates, and we have very little, let's say, internal manufacturing capacity. We outsource all of our clinical work. External companies run our clinical trials. External companies take our products to the large scale manufacturing. We don't do that internally. So we've always had external relationships with various companies, but they've always been more transactional focused. So we give them a high volume figure to produce, or we give them a certain target on a clinical trial. That's shifting very, very, very quickly. And again, with the new leadership coming in, they're focused on partnerships. What's the value on both sides? When Dan came in first, we signed a major partnership deal with Galapagos in Belgium. And that is a kind of a win-win on both sides, sharing that information between the teams, sharing the research. It's not a kind of we're going to take everything from the deal. It's definitely going to change. We've got Linda Higgins on the external innovation team who was looking at that whole product side of it and how we can actually do more partnerships. We're going to see more of that down the track. Andy, the CFO, who worked with Lazard for many years, is all keen on more partnerships, more development work in that area. And it's only going to grow and grow more as we go forward.
I want to talk a bit about digital transformation too, because as you're doing this crisis, how are you taking that new strategy of being much more patient oriented, knowing that you have to incorporate doctors and healthcare systems, insurance into this? How are you thinking about using UX in particular to deliver new areas? We talked about personalized medicine yesterday.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm
fascinating things.
That's the one that is to me, it's absolutely fascinating the way it's starting to work out. And just to go a small bit back in history before Dan joined, Gilead acquired Kite Pharma back in 2017, and Kite Pharma were working on the CAR T treatment, which is taking a unit of patient's blood, re-engineering the T cells within that, and then re-injecting it back into the patient to fight the blood cancer. That's completely out of Gilead's comfort zone. And what we tried to do at the time was actually absorb Kite into Gilead, and kind of lessons learned. Don't do that. We tried to convert a startup company, a fast-going company, into the way that Gilead done things. And one of the very first things that Dan did when he arrived, he broke that up. He said, okay, Kite are a very different company. They're part of the Gilead family, but no, here's Christy. She's going to be the CEO of Kite. You run with what you need to run with. But we do have the kind of shared services levels across HR, finance, IT, and all those areas. But they're very focused on the personalized medicine. And when they do that treatment, we've got 17 days to get that back to the patient. It cannot go any longer than 17 days, and you must get it right first time. That there is no second opportunity for this in most cases. So the patient is getting ready for their treatment. The physicians are lined up, the medical center is lined up, the manufacturing teams are lined up. So everybody's in this ecosystem of knowing where their place is. And what the team in Kite have created with Kite Connect is bringing all that linkages together. So, and it's not your traditional, make, buy, sell model. Everything goes at the same time. Now the patient does spend, after the treatment, 30 days in the hospital or in the medical center for monitoring. And all of that is all digital. What we're trying to do is move that all digitalized so that, as I said, the physician, the treating center, the patient, they're all prepped and ready and knowing what's going to happen. Now on the Gilead side, with the new head of commercial coming in, based off of the corporate strategy coming down, they've done a complete they're about to go on a complete transformation on the commercial side of things. We're getting ready for launching filgotinib, which will be Gilead's first step into rheumatoid arthritis, and that's a crowded space. So how are we going to use digital to differentiate ourselves in that space? As I said previously, Gilead always tried to focus on the science, and now with the new leadership shifting to more patient focus, it's combining the science plus the elements like digital and how we're going to differentiate ourselves.
Yeah, it strikes me that COVID also just has awakened this whole issue that's never just about the science, because there's also just manufacturing, the just-in-time aspects of this. And it strikes me that it's the pharma that's coming to become the center, the advocate for the patient, when in the past, pharma has always been filtered through the care providers. But in many ways, because it is the center of the treatment, it makes sense that you would actually be centering the patient also in there. This is not a role that pharma has played in the past. So
No.
yeah, it's interesting. Talk to me about how you think that customer engagement and patient engagement has permanently changed the way that Gilead is organizing itself, and also how you're thinking about that moving into bringing remdesivir into the market. What are the changes that you're anticipating you have to do?
Yeah, it's completely transforming the way that we're thinking about this. I mean, we had the kite push, which pushed us into that space and how we put the patient at the center of everything that we do. Now, doing something like that then focuses the entire organization into the kind of end user perspective. So even, me working in IT, we're much more focused now on end user. Okay, they're not a patient, but they're an end user of what we're trying to do. For a Gilead point of view, we're focused on the patient and what we can do for the patient. And Gilead has become much more tuned into what the patients are saying. Before, as mentioned, it was all science driven. So just to give you an example, when Gilead launched Tripla back in 2016, it was the first HIV single tablet regimen. So before that, HIV treatment was 20 to 30 tablets a day. A patient taking that couldn't eat their breakfast or their dinner, so their life was disrupted. So when you put three key ingredients in one tablet, which actually had to be separated in the tablet and actually entered the body at different times, and I won't go into that, but that was an innovation in itself back at that time. But you took one tablet per day, and that's it. For the rest of your life, take one tablet per day, and it turned HIV on its head. Now we're at the point where it's take one tablet a day, and you will prevent contracting HIV. So we're getting down that road, but I think the old Gilead may have stopped at, why would you want, we're giving you a tablet, just take it once a day and you'll be okay. Gilead have become much more tuned into the patient experience and what's happening. So when you give a patient one tablet per day, as they're taking that tablet, they're always reminded of what they're going through. And now that the kind of direction is, how do we remove that piece from them? So, and that kicked off the HIV long-acting program that we have. Can we move things in a different direction around maybe an injection once every 6 months, long-acting treatments, and this is all aimed at cure, and are we going to get to a cure for HIV? But yeah, I think the old Gilead would have stopped at we've given you all the science, take one tablet a day. It's not that bad, but every time they took that tablet, you're reminded of the situation that you're in, and we want to remove that. But I think it's a whole flip on its head. When the new leadership came in, when COVID-19 started, it just bound everybody together around this is, everybody needs an answer for what was happening with remdesivir. That pushed everything to another limit. And it's going to be interesting when we get back to any type of normal, what's going to happen. This has shaken everything up. How fast the FDA can move if they want to. It's going to be interesting to see how things play out. But the whole keeping the patient at the center of everything, from even their commercial interactions, as I mentioned, Kite Connect, when they're actually mentally getting prepared for this treatment, giving them all that information and gleaning all of the data from all of this at the same time, all of the real world data that's happening. It's something that we haven't been used to, but it's the necessary step that the leadership have given us the path to be able to do it.
So I have a couple questions. I want to turn to questions from the audience here. And again, if you're able to, I'd love to get some questions from you. So put them into the chat. I have one here that'll appeal to your core IT soul. So how do you see cybersecurity, IoT, artificial intelligence, and machine learning impacting the business and innovation over the next year or so?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, the uptick that, and I was talking to Chris, and he's our head of IT security. Oh my God, the amount of potential attacks on Gilead in the last while has just dramatically increased. But um, the less travel, cybersecurity is going to be an interesting one. It's definitely needs to be refocused, because you do have the working from home pieces that need to be secured as well. And Gilead were very actually early on doing all of that because of the scenario planning. IoT is going to play a huge part in this. So if we take the example of the kite piece, when we're tracking, so shipping a patient's blood across country, when you only get one opportunity to do it, that package can't go missing. So it's really important to kind of leverage all of the newer technology pieces that are out there. IoT is going to play a huge part in this, and then the machine learning and AI pieces, we've already been using some of that as part of our filing to the FDA for the COVID-19 for remdesivir. That was part of our filing submission, to actually bring some real world data, some analysis into all of that, and that's been fascinating. Just to tell a kind of a side story, with the Kite Pharma piece and the restrictions that were made on air travel, the team quickly had to figure out, how do you actually get blood from a patient in Europe to LA with the industry shut down. So we actually had to get one of the corporate jets to fly around Europe, pick up the patient's blood, get it back to LA, get it processed, and get it back to the patient within 17 days. And that was easy to track the patient's blood, but when you're using the normal process and the day-to-day, IoT is going to play a huge part. But layered on top of that, some of the security pieces, some of the AI machine learning, it's going to transform the way that we do things.
I want to take out your fairy godmother fairy wand, and assume you had the power to determine what an ideal innovation process would be for the development of a global COVID-19 vaccine. What would it look like?
Oh man, that's an interesting question. Everybody, the thing with innovation to me is that you have to remove the kind of constraints that are there, and I think some of the constraints have been broken down with the COVID-19 side of things. We now know that you don't need everybody in the same location to do all the development work. You don't need one area focused on it entirely. It's going to be a community effort, and you have to break down those barriers, and some of them have been broken down with the COVID-19 situation. It's a win-win on every side. So it's not a case of I win, you lose, or you win, I win. Everybody's winning on this side of it, and you put that out there with just the right phrasing of the challenge, and you get everybody bought into it the whole way, and everybody knows their part to play in all of that. And we've been the teams from Apple, Google, small companies have all been reaching out to see how they can help in all those scenarios, and it's been really, really interesting the way that it could go. If it was like, let's set up a innovation challenge for the world to come together to focus on. I mean, we have the perfect case study for what happened, but if you set a challenge like that, I think, if you can break down some of the barriers and some of the friction that we've broken down in the last couple of months, yeah, it would be great to set some type of challenge like that. It would be absolutely fascinating with no budget constraints. Keep everybody at home, free up the everything. That would be absolutely fascinating.
Just waiting for a very large truck to go by. So my last question here is, it's like especially just given everything that you're seeing for your team in particular, people are working at home. Are you planning to keep continuing to work at home? I mean, how are you thinking about reopening,
Yeah.
people coming back together as a leader of an
No.
innovation team? How are you going to operate differently going forward? Are you going to keep people at home? Are you going to bring them together? How are you thinking about this?
Yeah, it's something that the team in Gilead have been kind of, okay, what's it going to look like when we go back? Our conference room is going to have half the number of chairs, or half your team going to be still at home while half your team is in the office, and what's the point in being in the office if half your team are still at home? It's going to change, and it's going to come a lot more flexible. I think we will go back to any type of normal. If somebody wants to be in the office, they can be in the office. If they want to work from home, they can work from home. Some of the indications that we've been kind of trying to assess is that we're preparing for none of our team to be in the office until at least the end of August. Just you got to match all the personal situations that are happening, and then maybe beyond that. But that flexibility and the kind of we've still managed to do all of this while working remotely. So our 40% of the employee workforce never going to return to the office. I don't think it's going to be that drastic, but I think it's going to become a lot more flexible driven. If you want to work from Denver, work from Denver. If you want to work from Seattle, work from Seattle. It's changed that mindset in Gilead as well, because we have been so Foster City centric over the last decade that's all been broken apart at this point. I don't expect to see my team in person, for the next 2 or 3 months. It's not going to happen.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.